Great.
Welcome everyone to the live Q&A with Dr. Rob. We are glad for those joining us live, and if you're watching this recording later, come join us live on Monday nights at 5 p.m. Pacific time. So we love having the questions. We love having the group that if somebody asks a question and somebody else will add something onto it. So it is really helpful. So without further ado, we're going to get started. So Dr. Rob, I'm going to put the first question in the answered. So in a crisis, no one can hear what someone else has to say until they feel heard themselves. Can you talk more about how to tell that the partner is becoming regulated again? Softening of the face, relaxing of the shoulders, less tension in the voice, etc. With betrayal trauma, it is the addict's responsibility to set aside their own crisis until the addict feels heard and supported. I'm the addict partner, 4 years and 10 months of sobriety. Additional details, I forwarded that to you earlier in case you saw it, but this is enough so that you can go from there. So,
Well, I'm looking for, I just wanted to see the name of the training, PACT. So Dr. Stan Katkin, we're big fans of,
yes.
and what he is, just to say it, he's a pretty, in my field, well-acknowledged therapist that looks with intimacy problems among couples and how they can, what I hear, I'll use a fancy word, co-regulate, which basically means, how do I notice when you're starting to get upset? Is that you pull your mouth tight or you blink or, and you really, this is part of the training, if you will, you astutely learn when that partner is beginning to seem to be having a feeling. And then they teach you what to do when you see that, and the vice versa. And so, just to say it is called PACT, P-A-C-T. There are people who are PACT trained, just like there were sex addiction trained. And if you have the resources, this is the answer to your question, because this is exactly what people do: is they observe very carefully when that person looks. And we can give more answers too, but I think that is half the question, which is you can learn. And by the way, there he has books. You can look up PACT. There are different workbooks and stuff. But I do think, basically, to go back to that, there are observable signs that your partner's becoming upset. And you don't necessarily have to learn this through this kind of discussion. When you're talking about somebody that come home with work and they're frustrated with work, you begin to see it in their face or their body. As therapists, we're trained to try this. It's hard to do online, right? If someone does this, crosses their arms, what does that mean? Or they cross their legs, or they look the other way. We're really, the good among us, are trained to use what we call somatic expressions, meaning the body, how someone's body tells us. Everyone pretty much knows you cross your arms, you're, angry or frustrated. But so there are ways to learn about this. And this is not specific to sex addiction. This is in general. These are couples trainings. And it really helps with intimacy when you're saying, God damn, blah, 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 and you're thinking, okay, how do I manage? And you learn how to manage this level of escalation, that level. So I can give you only the sort of basics of it, or the idea of that. But there's another question here. And with betrayal trauma, it is the addict's responsibility to set aside their own crisis until the partner feels heard and supported. I am the addict's partner. 4 years, I'm just rereading, 4 years and 10 months of sobriety, additional emails in the Senate. And I think, as you said, this kind of covers it. So I would love you to, Tammy, if you don't mind to talk. Can I ask you, or do you want me to go first? I'll ask you, toss it back to me later. What are your
Okay.
thoughts about
Well,
what
and I
she's
go,
saying? Is she saying to put everything
no,
down?
he's saying,
Oh, the
I'm the
addict part.
addict,
Okay.
and this, I think it's my
Okay.
responsibility to do this.
Okay.
And I go, yes. And guess what? You're 4 years and 10 months out. You're pushing 5 years. Guess what? That is not something that I'm just trying to, figure out how I'm going to live life without doing my problematic behaviors. Like, we have no tools and we have no skills. That was why we did all the things we were doing using our maladaptive coping mechanism. So yes, this is something to work towards, and it is a process, but it is why we share, like, betrayed partners getting support from betrayed partners, addict partners getting support from addict partners, asking a question of, like, well, my wife was like this, what does that mean? Like, it's like the deciphering code ring or something, like, you need help early on. But yes, absolutely, this is what to strive for and work towards. But each of you having space, safe space, with people who can hold the space for you and understand all of the emotions and things. I share so often with partners, like, yes, ideally he's able to show up for you. It's not going to happen early on. That would be, I mean, maybe it'll somebody can do that, but it is usually not the case that they're able to. And I also would be worried that they'd be running out to go act out because, like, oh, that was really intense. I don't know what to do. So like learning, it's like giving yourselves some space and grace and support with other people, professionals that can help you regulate. And really key to doing this. But yes, it is something that we work with addict partners to learn to do, is to hold that space. I often do I'm going to hold my hands out in front so that all of this is going, the emotions are going in here and I can kind of see them, but I'm not a sponge and I'm not absorbing them. And that helps me not be defensive with that and just be able to look at, but yes, I mean, uh, I ask addict partners, where do you feel this in your body? We're clueless about where we start to feel things. And so, how are we going to understand what to look for in someone else? So, learning to go, oh, when I get upset, I hear my voice gets higher, I get louder, I get bigger. I'm making gestures, or I feel it in my gut. I see my shoulders, whatever. What can you identify about yourself? That would be a great conversation to have with your partner, to say, what do when you're upset, what's your first sign of that? Give me some clues on how I can start to recognize this, and for partners to go, well, he should just understand, what is the goal? And I love Stan Tatkin's work. I put the link for Pact Institute, in the chat, but, this is the process. And what is the goal? If the goal is to heal individually. And one of the podcasts that I often point towards, Dr. Rob and Dr. Stan Tatkin did a podcast in January of 2019 called We Do, and it talks about a healthy relationship. I think that's a beautiful thing to strive for, on this journey. Again, whether you're, involved in addiction, if you're here, that's probably part of the landscape. But if you're not, it still is. What is the goal? If the goal is to have a healthy, relationship for the two of us, because guess what? Then we're both healthier, happier, all of those things, than doing everything we can figure out, hopefully with some qualified help to help us on that path so that we're moving towards each other, not perfectly, but have the tools to begin to use. It's not only have the tools, but know which one to pick up when. That's really key to all this stuff. So, but I'm so glad you're asking the question. I think it's a great question, but I really see this as a journey and a process. And the more you grow in your recovery, the more capacity you have. You've practiced with other people in your recovery groups. You've had more time to understand what's going on for you. You've had more time to identify, these are my emotions. Wow, I didn't even know I could tolerate those. Oh, I can, and therefore I can also hold space for someone else. So, yay for you for 4 years and 10 months, one day at a time. It does add up. It really does. And the journey gets different. And, it doesn't mean it's all better. And, but man, oh man, the progress, I bet if you look back at even 4 years ago, how much progress you've made, or 2 years ago. I usually use my 2 year mark. It's like, well, 2 years ago, this is what was happening. And I can see the progress even now of that I'm making along the journey. It's a journey. I want to keep striving for doing better, growing. So, Dr. Rob,
Well, I wanted to pick the question apart a little bit, which is
okay,
crisis. So I don't know, you are 4 years and 10 months
10
into
months. Yeah.
sobriety. What's a crisis? I mean, so one of the things I interpret, I make up, is that you get defensive. So your crisis is, why are you bringing this up again? And you sort of an internal, like, how do, I don't you this happened 3 years ago, and so maybe because you're saying should the addict put aside their crisis, as you call it, in order to focus on the partner. So I'm not really sure. I mean, there's a lot missing here, and I know that you have some fill in, Tammy, but what is a crisis for someone at 4 years? Because to me, and putting it aside, because I think at that point I should have enough experience, or I'd like to think, to regulate myself. In other words, when I feel like I want to defend myself, when I brought up something upsetting and they get really angry, take a step back. So, and I don't, again, crisis is a very strong word to me, like in the first discovery, and that's a crisis. I want to leave. I can't talk to you. You've ruined our lives. That's a crisis. So one of the things that I don't have an answer to is what do you define as a crisis? Because even that makes me think, wow, it sounds a lot bigger than maybe what it really is. The other thing is I wrote a book and I highly recommend it called Out of the Doghouse, a relationship saving guide for men caught cheating. This is why I wrote it. I wrote it for men who aren't really sure how to not be defensive, how to see what's going on with their partner, how to show empathy and compassion. This is why I wrote the book. And we teach a course, don't we, Tammy? In Out of
Yep,
the
I just put it
Doghouse?
in the chat. Yep.
Okay, so I highly recommend teaching is good, learning is good. Read the book, and I really mean that because it does very carefully lay out if you're in trouble with your spouse, what do you do? If they're angry, how do you handle it? All of those kinds of things. Um, I had a couple of things I wrote down. Do you talk about this when you're not in crisis? Because I think one of the most important things we talk about, so we do something called a timeout. No big surprise. When we're arguing, I don't think it's what you're talking about, but when we're in a big argument and we don't seem to resolve it and we're escalating, we have an agreement, and you say, I'm going to take a timeout and I'll be back in, because you always want to say when you're coming back. And then you go and you come back in whatever amount of time is, you readdress the problem. And if it's still really hot, you say, you know what, we need to. So the reason I'm saying this is that is one. So before you do a timeout, you practice. So you say, hey, let's pretend that we're having this argument. And if I take a timeout, will you follow me? Or is it okay that I leave? Will you trust that I'm coming back in this amount of time? How do I know? So what I'm saying to this is, and I don't know if you are, this is a question for your spouse. When I see this going on, how would you like me to handle it? When I notice this, how, and again, it's in Doghouse. Here is how you might respond to this. Something else I wrote down. Da, 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 da. Um, what do I want to say? Do you have to attend to your partner? I'm not sure what that means, but I think with anyone I care about, when a crisis shows up, I need to put my stuff down and I need to say, especially in recovery, let me take a breath because in this moment, what's most important? I'm frustrated. I don't like hearing this again, and they're in a crisis, or like, what is the higher best good? The best good is my issues will be dealt with, but this person is in a crisis. I love them. Let me take a moment and put it down and let's spend some time dealing with their issue. I don't know if I'm trying to think of a good metaphor, and this isn't a good metaphor, but I'm thinking, I don't know, we both are exercising together, and I'm so sick of exercising. I just really hate it, and I'm struggling and I hurt everywhere. But my partner fell over and sprained their ankle. Well, I'm not going to talk to you about, gee, my legs hurt. I'm going to pay attention to you spraining your ankle. And then I'll come back when you're feeling better and say, I have to deal with. So I think it has to do with being able to sense and understand when the moment is not redeemable, when it is redeemable, what steps. But there are concrete paths that are laid out that answer your question. They're written about, we understand them. These aren't mysteries. And I think your question is well served, but a lot of it depends on the two of you. How do you define a crisis? Have you talked about this? Also, I do want to say, I don't know if Tammy mentioned this, but 4.5 years is a long way. So what are you in crisis about? Or is your spouse, God love him, still saying, well, you ruined my life 4.5 years ago? That is probably an issue that's not, that they need to come to more peace with. Because I think at a certain point, if you're doing what you need to be doing, the temperature needs to be turned down. So is the crisis they keep going back to where they started? Or is it that you lied about something, like something small, like I said I was on the grocery? So did you show them an example of your being dishonest? Did you show them a reason to? It did have to do with you. So there are a lot of individual pieces here, but my best answer is talk about it when you're in a calm place, try to understand what would make them feel. But I mean, it's the two of you, and then do some research, learn some things, take the course because I really recommend it in this case. And I guess the last thing, what I'm reading is how do I non-defensive and how do I have empathy? So my life, my spouse is angry, they're upset, and do I how do I handle that? I can see it, not hard to see. Do I say, wow, you seem really upset, we should take a minute out? Or you're really upset, I bet that thing at work really bothered you. And am I taking a step towards you and saying, I really want to hear more? Or I understand you're still upset with me, tell me more about that? Or do you say, what's the big deal? I've heard this a million times before, in which case that's going to escalate. So it has to do with a lot of things and depends on the couple. But to me, again, the first thing starts out with when are we? When are you? And how do I recognize what? How do you think we should handle it? I think Tammy said, but there's a safe word. Someone said this to me today. I don't think it was Tammy. Um, oh, I know what the word was. I know the conversation. Truce. So we're real heated. Things are going badly. One of you or you say truce, which means we need to just be calm for a few moments. We need to take a little time out, and then we'll come back. What does the word truce really mean? That for the moment we're gonna. Oh, I guess for Christmas, the two sides are not going to fight. They're going to take a day off, and they're going to have a truce, or we're done fighting and we reach revolution. So resolution. So find a word that allows you both to step back and say, okay, we're in this place. Let's take a moment and think about how to manage what we've already talked about. It's a great question. In some ways, that went really to boil us down to that particular couple. Um,
Yeah, and I love that you talked about taking a time out, and I do think it's really important to practice that in advance. And I vote do it before you get into a really heated discussion. Like you start to feel things escalate, and again, why I think the somatic understanding. Oh, my gut just tightened up. Okay, like I need to be aware if stuff is going on for me. I know where this is going. Like I've done this pattern a zillion times. Like
right,
before it gets to be this heated fight that we have to unravel, could it be I'm starting to feel it. I need to take a time out so I can go regulate. I will come back to. I'm not abandoning you. I'm going to come back in 20 minutes. Set your timer on your phone and come back. So all of those things can help. And yes, I'm with Dr. Rob too. I hadn't thought of that, but that's really good. That if you're in crisis at 4 years and 10 months, that would be really difficult. And that seems like a higher level of professional help to help you as a couple navigate those situations. So yeah, there's a lot good here. And yeah, this is a journey, so continue the journey.
and I just said one more concrete thing. I had a colleague at work a number of years ago, and she was either one place or the other. She was open and discuss, or she was. And I'd get on the phone, or it was one of these things, and I'd say, "Oh, I can see the place they're in." I mean, it was pretty, looking down, backed away. And I thought, I'm going to be very careful about my words because I can see, or wow, they seem really open. They're smiling, whatever. So in some ways, I don't think it's that hard to say, where someone is coming from if you're observing them and to anticipate. I think today I need to back off because I can already see this is, and this is going to go bad. Great question, but something is not right at this 4.5 years. So I'm just wondering, what's missing. So, want to
So
keep rolling
the
along?
first one, I want you to look at the chat because this is the question I couldn't put in the Q&A. So my partner's CSAT has determined that he is not an addict despite there being a significant escalation in the time he spent using pornography and the genres he was viewing. He has escalated to contact with content creators, which of course damaged our marriage. What is the practical difference between addiction and problematic pornography usage, and how many of the tools and resources you share are applicable to both? Let me caveat this with, I did interact with this person, and because I asked, did you hear it from his therapist? And she did not. It was through him.
Uh,
And she said they did a paper and pen assessment, so there's some things there.
so, can you
That's just a
explain
little
that a
more
little more,
data.
because other people might benefit from what you just said?
So certified sex addiction therapists are trained to utilize there's a battery of assessment tools that can really help them, including one is a 600 question sexual dependency inventory there, but there's three more that I highly recommend, which helps get a better magnitude. And if it's pornography, then there's another assessment that can also be useful. But if they're doing a paper and pen, that is really outdated, at best, but probably not I mean, this one is online, you answer, there's a report created, et cetera. The other component of it was, this person shared that her husband told her that the CSAT doesn't think he's an addict and is therefore he's unwilling to do some things that
Yeah.
would help if he
Hmm.
was, he's denying the label addict, so therefore he doesn't have to treat this like addiction. So that,
But I wanted to pile on the one thing, and just one thing you missed that you said earlier, which is
yeah,
we lie,
yeah,
lie. So my
yeah, yeah.
therapist may say to me, "Oh, you're not really an addict, you're this and that." well, let me say it this way. My therapist may say, "Oh my God, you're such an addict. You really need to do this and that." And then I come home to you and I say, the therapist didn't really think. So one of the things I really recommend is that you say, "I'd like to attend one of the therapy sessions." This is not it's private between us. It's long-term psychotherapy, going to ruin the room. I bring people in as collaterals. And the word collateral means I don't want to see them. They're not my client, but I want more information from them. I might bring in an adult child and say, what is your experience growing up? Or because I don't necessarily, even the addict has it as right in the way they see it. The way they see it might not be fully reflective of reality. So someone might say, you're always defensive all the time. Well, maybe there are things I make you defensive. I just don't see it. So having that person in the room. There are also things that spouses can do, like leave a message for the therapist on their voicemail and say, "No, I know you can't talk to me. You don't have a release. By the way, I would want to make sure that the therapist has a release to talk to you. We need a release legally. Even if you're my client and you're married to someone else, I still need a release to talk to them. That is a legal level of confidentiality. But you can say to your spouse, I want a release. I want to talk to your therapist. You can say, I want to leave a message on their voicemail and I want to let them know my concerns. Um, I wanted to address the larger question though. And it's interesting because to me, the question's irrelevant. It is irrelevant. The question to me, the issue for me is your spouse is upset. Well, this is not the addict. The addict, whoever they are, addict, they look at too much porn, they contact whatever it is that they do. It's upsetting you and you don't like it and you don't feel comfortable with it and it's escalating and it's damaging your marriage. Why isn't and I assume it's a husband, I don't know. Why
Yeah,
isn't
it
he
is.
listening
Yeah.
to this? Why is his priority, I've got to keep looking at the porn or whatever? Why are you on my back? Why isn't his priority, you know what? I really love you. And I don't even see why you see this as a problem. I don't. But what's important to me is you feel loved by me and our relationship. And it doesn't matter doesn't matter, addict or no addict. What comes to my mind, are you respecting the person you live with? See, here's a sign of an addict, which is I think what I want to do is more important than our relationship. And so it's nice that you said that, but this is more important. And so screw you, I'll do what I want. And I don't think it's the porn that's a damaging thing. I think it's it's the lack of respect for you and for your relationship. To me, that's damaging. So I could tell you he's an addict, he isn't an addict, but what really matters to me is in this relationship, what's important to him? This is what Tammy, I think she talked about earlier, which is when you make a decision in a relationship, what is the best decision you can make? And the answer is always what is best for us, for the two of us. So if I'm doing something that's very distressing to you, what is the best thing for the two of us to improve our relationship? Probably for me to stop doing the distressing thing. And we can work on a couples there. We can talk about it for a while. Whatever the resolution is, you may go back to it. But what's important to me in that moment is you're listening, you're hearing me, you're respecting what I have to say, and I'm more important than you're fighting to be able to do this or do that. So I don't know if that's what you were thinking, Thomas, or you nod your head, but what I worry about is yes, the porn, yes, the contact creator. By the way, contacting, it's hard to say, contacting content. What is it? Contact. Okay, this is three C's.
And creators. Yeah.
Contact, I'm going to say it one more time. Contacting content creators. Whew, that was hard. Is concerning to me because I don't know who they are. Maybe and I just make that up, maybe they work with regular creation of porn or everyday porn, or maybe they're also content creators for children's porn. Once I start, or maybe they're police, I don't know. Whatever, I don't. I had a guy who said, he said he was on one of those sites and one of the interactive sites, and he was starting to talk with a young woman, and she looked very young, and he said, how old are you? And she said 19. And I was like, okay. And then, of course, she wasn't, and he got in lots of trouble. And he said, he was on this site. Let's say the connection site was X, and he said, I thought that X made sure that they were going to protect that no person. So his belief was that the connection site, the porn connection, whatever, that they would check the license to make sure. So he was expecting this, disrespectable site to make sure he was safe. So when you go out and start engaging with people who are doing things like creating porn, you really don't know who you're talking about. You really don't know what's going on. They can blackmail you, they can scam you. So, again, what is going to be the effect on my marriage? What is going to be the effect on my relationship? What am I creating? Or am I taking pictures of the spouse of the person next door and pasting? So all of this, to me, the first thing is about your relationship. And then if I love you and if I respect you and if I'm willing to stop, then you look at, is this a problem or not? I think if he chooses the porn over you, that gives you a lot of information. So I don't know. What are your thoughts, Tammy?
Two things on that, and I had said to her in an email, the minimizing, lots of people minimize to their therapist. Oh, they aren't telling the whole truth, so that's part of hanging on to things. So it may not be the therapist. You're hearing it only through his lying lips, as I often say. And like, I think it just sounds like, oh, problematic pornography usage just sounds nicer. And so some people like, oh, I don't like the word addict. And I'm like, well, I mean, I personally do, because it gave me like, oh my gosh, I was doing all of this crazy stuff that I could not stop. I tried and I could not
Right.
stop. And then all of a sudden somebody said, guess what? You're an addict. And here's what you can do. And if you do these things, you don't have to keep doing the same problematic behaviors you were doing. It, to me, it's semantics on some level.
Right. Right.
Um, but at the end of the day, what is he going to do to be on a path where he's not using that or some other form of problematic behaviors, as a maladaptive coping mechanism? What is he going to do to work towards the relationship? The digging in the heels, that to me is data. Like, what, like Dr. Rob said, what is he willing to do to work on the relationship? What is he willing to do to honor, that this is a problem for our relationship and our family? What is he willing to do to change? And yeah, whatever you label it, it still is. It's a problem. It's, and there is help. It's just, is he willing? Or if he hasn't had enough pain. I said, no addict changes. And I use that term addict. When I'm doing a support session, I'll often say, I'm going to use the term addict. If that doesn't, it doesn't feel authentic for you, I'm sorry, but that is the easiest word I use. And so please hear it however, I'm saying it. But man, oh man, if we're willing to do something different, we can have a life that is so good. But if we're trying to hold on to, in fact, in the 12-step book, it talks about, hanging on to our old ideas, and the result was nil until we let go. Absolutely. So you can't have one arm going, wait, and still move forward on a path that is different. So
I was going to say one more thing, which is Tammy does this so well. Tammy, you do this so well. I think you get better. Tammy does a lot of coaching as a licensed coach, and she certainly does a lot of support sessions. And if you want to talk to Tammy, I don't think it costs very much, but it's TAMI at seekingintegrity.com. And one of the things she said, which I thought was really important, is um, what I was complimenting her is Tammy's gotten very curious, which I really like. What I would say is, rather than say, I think you're an addict and you're this and that, I'd say, gee, I don't understand. This seems to be very important to you. What is so important to you about it? Or why don't you respond when I'm upset? In other words, I think when I come at you and say, you're an addict and this and that, and I'm not saying you do, it's for anybody who's listening, then I'm going to get defensive and say, no, I'm not. And why you always I think if you really want to understand, say, I don't understand. How has this become so important to you? How is it that we have disagreements around this and I don't feel like I'm heard? Why it seems to me you're defensive. Are you so if you can be at a point where you're not, again, you're at a peaceful place and you can have a conversation, just see, I really want to improve our relationship and there's things I just don't understand. I think that at least would lead you to understand better whether he's willing to be open, talk about it, or whether he's just being defensive when you get upset. Because we do, as people, and certainly as addicts, we shut down. I see your, and this isn't healthy, but I see your angry face, and this is when we lie, we gaslight, we'll do anything we can to get out of your being angry at us. So in that ways, we're little boys. So when there's not an upset place, I think this is a really good. By the way, I don't know if they're in therapy. I don't know if the
well,
spouse,
he's in seeing a
right?
CSAT
But what is
who is
she
apparently
doing?
saying,
So we have a
yeah.
betrayed partners group.
Hmm.
I think this is a great place to hear about how do I approach? How do I talk about what if he says yes? What if he says no? There are support groups that are absolutely free on our site. I mean, as Tammy and I know we spent a lot of time creating about 14 groups. You can come every week.
Oh,
So
more
if
than
you're an older
that, yeah.
spouse, you're a younger spouse, whether there's groups for everyone. So and by the way, you don't even have to show yourself because I used to do this a lot. Am I doing it right? Well, I'm not doing it quite right. But I can do it this way. although you'll see me.
Yeah.
You don't have to show your face. You can just go to the support group and say, I feel really uncomfortable showing my face, but I wonder if. So you can find ways to do this, but try to be with people who have had experiences like you're having. I mean, we give great answers most of the time, but we're not in your life to see what kind of things would support you. So I think Tammy would, I'm speaking for Tammy now, would reach out and say, how are you supporting yourself? And if he's not listening to you, do you have people in your life who are? Or how are you dealing with your anger, your disappointment? Where are you at with your marriage if this is going? You said damaging my marriage. Well, it may not improve between the two of you, but you don't have to feel damaged. So anyway, and Tammy, you can speak to this better. I don't want to go on and on, but I think there's a lot of focus on what if he doesn't say this and what if he doesn't say that and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but I'm thinking when you get upset about these things, how do you breathe? How do you take care of you? When he's being defensive, how do you step back and take care of you? Um, because that will make it a lot easier on you, regardless of what he has to say. But the word addict is less important to me than the actions. Am I respectful to you, or do I say this? Do I say I'm not going to drink anymore for a while, or do I say, look, what's a few glasses of wine? Why are you bugging me about it? Big difference. Yeah, good
Okay,
question.
so there's three in a row that are I put in the answered. So follow up to the first question. I just finished reading Tetkin's
Yeah,
Wired for Love and have We Do on my reading list soon. Loved Wired for Love and Dr. Rob Tetkin podcast. Yes, and he did a second one with Dr. Rob. So yes, both of them are on sex, love, and addiction. And then he adds, to be clear, I am not in crisis with my wife. Is not in crisis. We are doing very well with co-regulation. My question and comment is for the benefit of couples who are much earlier in the process. And we both loved Out of the Doghouse. Yes, we talked deeply and consistently. Very robust Fanos, which that's a check-in. That's just one, and I'll go find that and put the link for that. But there's a bunch of different, but Fanos can be good. Well, it's good. Yay, you're doing good on
I,
the journey. So yeah.
I just want to say something that I really appreciate this. And to me, in some ways, it's service to say, I think this might help other people. And so I want to bring it up. It makes me, as someone here to support you, a little uncomfortable because I would rather you said, I think my wife and I've worked this out, but I think a lot of couples deal with this. And I wonder if you could explain how they deal with it. Because, I just want you to be completely truthful and honest. And for me, when you talked about that, I felt very compassionate. I felt very concerned for you. And, what I would have liked to say to you is, wow, you're doing great and great. You're doing all these things and you took the course. And I know you were saying we're great. And it's true. It's just that there was a little twinge of, well, why didn't they just talk to me? I'm right here. So I don't know what your feeling was, and we don't have to go into that. But if you have a question, by all means, say, I have some friends who are struggling with this, or glad to answer them. If you need help, we're going to talk to you. So let's keep going.
Okay, so go to open.
Oh, okay.
Betrayed partner here, 6 months in, staying in relationship with husband in recovery. The pain of betrayal is so overwhelming for me. And I have met other partners who are still in pain years into this journey. Can you offer any hope for a future that is not dominated by this experience? I need hope.
This is a Tammy
Yes.
Starts question, I
Yes.
think.
And I have two things for you. So last week, Thursday, Rebecca Hogue talked about, and she started to introduce herself and she started to say, and then she went, wait, I'm a human. And I was like, thank you. It was like it was the second time that week where it was like, let's pay attention. We are not defined by these labels. And I loved that she, focused on that. So I absolutely know. And, Melissa from Wetonglin is going to join on March
Oh,
5th. She'll
good,
be on a
good.
webinar with me. And yeah, she's not defined by this label. Like lots of partners are not. There are some, and I'm going to be really honest, there are some that choose to stay stuck, like literally as angry as when they were first, and D-Day, and they're years out and they're name calling, they're
Oh,
betraying partner. No, it's really sad, Dr. Rob. And I feel for those partners because they are defined by that moment. Dr. Eddie Caparucci, who's going to do a webinar on 319 on defensiveness, join us for that. But
hmm.
he did one, and he talked about Dr. Gabor Mate, who's a world-renowned therapist, and he's the paraphrase of the quote is, "What has happened, you can't undo. What you do today is the trauma and how you move forward carrying that trauma rather than, getting the help that you need to intervene." I have no control over another person. Like like even in the present, but I sure can affect how I act and react, in that, and giving up my present and future to what happened in the past.
Mm.
Like I'm not willing to sacrifice. I am not willing to do that. And I know lots of partners who are not either. So no, it does not have to be the definition of your life going forward. It is a piece. I'm not gonna lie, it's never gonna, you can't make it unhappen, but you sure can have it. I was talking to somebody earlier today, speaking of support sessions, and we talked about right sizing it, like it doesn't have to be this overwhelming. And she asked what that meant. And I said, because right now it feels huge,
Right.
and it can get so that it's a piece. I just ordered for myself. I talk about kintsugi art all the time. I'm sure I'm slaughtering that with a nice Midwest accent on a Japanese art form, but it's the broken pottery. And then when it's glued
Oh,
together, it's with a gold glue. It's beautiful. And I just treated myself to a necklace that's coming,
wow.
because it's kintsugi art for on a necklace, and because I love that analogy of in our brokenness and with that gold glue, it's
Right.
stunning art. We can become stunning art, not not without the brokenness. We would never be like that without that brokenness. That's the gold glue that comes. So I'm a huge believer. Like we wouldn't do this work if we didn't know, not just think or hope. We know people can heal. We know, like that first person, my wife and I are doing really well. We are co-regulating. We are on this path. I'm doing the work. She's got her support. Like, yeah, thank you. That's a great validation of you being willing to do the work. For those that are willing to do the work, things can change. But partners do not, even if the addict partner, and I'm using addict again, even if that person chooses not to do the work, that does not have to define who you are. And it does not have to steal the rest of your joy and your life. So there's enough. Okay, I'm going to stop.
I don't think you need me, Tammy. I really mean that.
I am
So
passionate about this stuff.
one of
So
the
yeah,
things that Tammy didn't say that I heard is 6 months. It is
yeah, yeah,
so
yeah.
early. So, and I'm sorry to say that. I wish I could say poof, but 6 months is, and I'm sorry to say this, really just well, if you look at just simple grief, right? What is a grief cycle? So it's, bargaining, this didn't couldn't really be, and then depression, I think, like, oh my God, but somewhere in there is anger. And one of the stages of grief is anger. So the fact that you are overwhelmed, you're angry, you have no hope, to me, these are different signs that you're in deep grief and mourning and disbelief. And, you don't, I mean, I'll compare it to death. I had a dear friend who died, and 6 months later, I wasn't fine with it. I was still crying. I was still sad. So there's two things. I think your expectations of yourself, that you're supposed to feel a certain way, or you should, or why, I think that's unfair to yourself. I think what I would probably say is, I wish I wasn't in this place, but I am. And I wish it was a clear answer for me, but Mary is doing better at this stage and Joe is doing, but this is me. And I have to, acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. So just the beginning of, and I will answer the rest of your question, to accept that's where you are. And you wish you weren't, but you are. And I think in part, talking to the other partners, make sure they know it hasn't been that long. Because there are other partners who aren't in the same pain because it has been longer. There are some, there are all kinds of different situations. Um, I absolutely believe that there is future for hope and future without this constantly being in your mind and not leaving. I don't think it's now. At 6 months, you see a billboard of somebody attractive and you think, or you see some movie there they are. That's just what they did. So it pops up. It's sort of like it can't help. You can't help yourself. You see him looking over there or her looking over there as a attractive person. It's like, oh, there they go again. They're at it again. No, I was actually just looking to see if the bathroom was there. It doesn't matter. You're going to react. So I think I think the question would be, can I allow myself the grace to feel awful and to be doubting and to be struggling in pain and to lower my expectations that I should feel differently or when will I feel differently. The other piece is, of course, there's hope. I mean, as Tammy said, we wouldn't do this. I have worked literally with 1,000 couples, and I have seen, Tammy, I always think about this couple who their kids were involved and they were committed to change, and their kids were kind of getting the middle, and they had to spend time alone. Yeah, I don't remember this couple. I think they
I
sent us
do.
little. They
I
sent
was
us
going to say,
little.
I have the starfish right here.
Yeah,
It's, I
they
have the
sent.
glass starfish ornament.
They live at the
Do-
ocean. They sent Tammy and I little glass ornaments. But what I what I
But
saw in that
what it
couple.
was wait, they're starfish, and he gave they were separated,
Oh,
and
right,
he gave her a gold starfish or necklace for their anniversary, because a starfish, if it loses a limb, it
right,
regenerates. It doesn't make the exact same limb, but it
right.
regenerates. So that was the visual representation of their relationship of, we are going to regenerate, and they've done well.
They're
So
such a great
yes, I have
couple.
a
I
I have
still
a
remember it
starfish ornament
after all
there.
these
Yeah,
years.
I knew exactly who you were talking
I don't
about.
know why,
Yeah,
but they just
because
they
I
stuck it
love,
out.
yes, and and
Hmm.
and they saw a regeneration. They weren't like, I want it to go back to the way. They were like, no, we're going to move forward. And and yeah, they celebrated an anniversary. Their kids were all like, yes, they were able to move forward.
And I
So,
want to add that he went through our treatment program
mhm.
and he went to Seeking Integrity and had a really good experience, but he carried it through. And I do want to say anything about residential treatment. We teach, I think, pretty much what you need to know. I'm pretty sure we look in your past, look at your present, give you guidelines, work with your spouse. But the bottom line is rubber hits the road when you go out in the world. And so I don't want anyone to think that treatment is a cure. I think it's sort of like I can teach you something in school, but you have to practice. My French isn't that great, but if I spend some while in Paris, I probably will get better. And so I'm not sure that's a good metaphor, but I wanted to say something else, which is it isn't just you. Meaning, how is he conducting his recovery? Do you see him going to regular support groups? Do you see him going to meetings? Do you see him working with a therapist? Do you see him keeping his commitments to you? Because words are great, but we lie and we hide things. And I've said this many times. What matters to me for a spouse is, are you doing the things you say you're going to do? Are you saying the things, And I ask the guys who go through treatment, put a piece of paper on the refrigerator. Monday night I'm doing this. Thursday I'm going to that meeting. Friday I'm going to do some meditation in the morning. You shouldn't, as a spouse, say, "Did you do that today?" We should just do it. And then if we want to say, "Hey, I did that this morning." So when you feel relieved that we have taken responsibility for our problem, I think then it becomes easier as a spouse. But right now, 6 months, oh my God, what a nightmare. And I am so, so sorry. And I think it's too soon. I understand wanting that. But oh, Tammy, I gotta tell you, I think it was Stephanie Carnes who said, we were talking about all this, and she said she was talking about working with addicts or spouse, whatever. And she said, "What therapist wants an angry person in their office?" And it's kind of like, um, I it would be so much easier if you were acting the way that would be helpful for me, but you're not. And so I really be looking carefully at what am I getting triggered by? Because there may be things still going on that leave you feeling hopeless. Um, yeah. So, and by the way, this is
Well,
another go to the betrayed partners group. I think I
I
interrupted.
just, yeah, no, I put the healthy boundaries, because the work group starts in March, but that one, and it talks about internal boundaries, and an internal boundaries is, I am not going to betray myself. And so for some, it's like, I'm going to focus on my healing. But and to key in, she did allude to all these other partners who are in pain years into the journey, and that's why I went down that avenue. There are some, and some come to our drop-in groups, and they are angry and resentful and
Oh,
everything else years in. And I always say to people, look for the healthy people. Just like the betraying partner, if you look for the people who are on this
the
journey that want
winners.
to change, yeah,
Hmm.
yeah. Hang with the winners. Yep.
I want to say one more thing because I don't want to tell the whole story, but when I go to a place where I can vent, I vent. And so it may well be that a lot of them are in a lot better place, but when they go to that place where they can express their anger, they can get it out, you may be seeing a piece of it, but you're not seeing the whole picture. And maybe spending some more time. Go out for coffee or spend some time one-on-one chatting. But honestly, I think you need more experience in seeing the whole process. Go to different groups, have different experiences. By the way, Tammy, when I said, I was thinking about the next question because it broke my
Okay, I will.
heart.
I'm going to add, because we do support sessions, and I
Yeah,
do
come
them,
visit
but other
us.
people do too. And so, like, I'm just one
Well,
option. I'm not
s-
everybody's cup of tea. I get it. So
since
yeah.
you brought that up, by the way, everything we're talking about, if you want to find one of the podcasts, if you want to find one of the free groups, if you want to find all these lectures and videos, if you want to join a course, if you want to go to residential, here it is right here in our fake offices. Only Tammy's has everything is on the Seek Integrity website, and we deliberately made sure that there was one place you go, whether it's free, paid, whatever.
And I
We
have a hit list of like literally I call it my hit list, but I have like 4 pages of YouTube videos that I pulled out because I have so many resources. And I was like, I kept giving them to people, and I was like, it'd be easier if I just can copy and paste, which for this question I'm going to do in a moment. But the question, Dr. Rob, is how do I manage to get past the images or acting out behaviors that were so egregious that even brain spotting and EMDR haven't helped? I can't accept nor even believe the things he participated in and transactionally paid for. We are 10 months since D-Day. Full disclosure happened in October, and it was a train wreck. I'm 73 years old and I can't make a decision to stay or leave. I'm unable to get unstuck, and I feel disgust and disbelief.
Well, I want Tammy. First of all, it broke my heart, and I'm a bit of an ageist, but I'm not that far from 73. And I've had a 25-year relationship. You may have had a 40-year one, and the idea that for a lot of us, this has gone on all these years and I didn't know about it. Who am I really married to? They say they love me, but they've been doing this, and it's so much more than I thought, or whatever. Um, I do think there's a special piece for someone who has been in a relationship for a very long time, or they're older and they're stuck. I'm not sure I'd want to go back out on my own necessarily, whatever that means, unless I had a really loving, supportive family and people who could support me when I'm out of the relationship. But again, I'll say a couple of things. October was not that long ago. I don't know, November, December, January, 5 months. I have to count isn't that 5 months ago, Tammy?
Yes, but the
Okay.
my issue is that it was the disclosure was in October and it was a train wreck. That's my
Right.
issue. Yeah.
Well, and again, I'll toss that to Tammy to talk about what she's concerned about is how was the disclosure conducted? Was it done in a healthy way? Because usually there's a lot of ways to follow through. Okay, now we've done this. What are we going to do the next month? We're going to do the next 2 months. But I'll leave that to Tammy. Regardless of that, October is 5 months ago, and it seems premature on a lot of levels to say stay or leave. And I do want to say one thing that's very important. There is something in between, which is you can separate. You can physically separate if you can afford it, and you can live in different places. Or you can do an in-house separation, which is kind of like being roommates. We did a whole podcast, two-part podcast cast called Therapeutic Separation. It's here on sex, love, and addiction. Um, at any age, you can say, I want you to go live with your sister, or I want us to have, and this is how we're going to reach out to each other. Or so I think, which I totally understand, it feels black and white. Should I stay or should I go? Um, is this going to get better, or am I going to ever be out of pain, or am I not? I don't think any of this is as black and white. I think most of it is gray and moves one way or the other depending which way it goes. But I got to tell you, so one of the things I say this, guys, I have to say, and I'm always acting out, and Tammy, please forgive me because I am going to use now words. Um, when I have men who are acting in who are 70 or 65 or even a little younger in that age group, seniors, I hear what they call us. I think we're well experienced, but call us seniors if you like. But one of the things I say to these older men is, you're 74 years old. Who's going to wipe your ass in 3 years? Do you think that your 20-year-old girlfriend is going to be there to help you with your cane? Oh, well, I'm very healthy, and I don't care how healthy you are. We get older, parts are going to wear out. Who's going to be there when you're after surgery? So I think that for the addicts, we don't actually, we're only thinking about the moment, and we're not thinking about the bigger picture of our lives. And and I'll say one more thing. I will shut up. We run a treatment program at Seeking Integrity, which is residential. And I have had, it's shocked me, actually, Tammy, I have a reasonably large percentage of men who come in between 60 and 75. And in my mind, I have to say, I think, well, at 75, like, why? And what I have learned and what I've taught them is however it goes with your spouse, you're 75 years old. I want you to look in the mirror and feel good about yourself at this stage in your life. And if you're lying and you're cheating and you're manipulating, you're upsetting your spouse, you're not going to be able to look in the mirror and feel good about yourself. And I want to say when I have an expiration date. Trust me, I know. I didn't know when I was 40, but I know I have an expiration date. I want to make sure that each day I'm looking at the mirror and I feel good about the person and the way I'm living. And so I think there's two pieces, which one, not really understanding on a bunch of levels that it means to act out and harm your relationship at this age. And also the little piece about himself, which is what kind of man do you want to be? And how do you want your spouse to look at you at the end, toward the end of this relationship? And I know, I hope you all live to 100. I know Tammy will because she works out so much, but
Mm.
but I'm not sure it's entirely like that. Oh, and I'll say one more thing, and this has nothing to do with it. But I was some really famous actor who died recently. I hate this, and they were on TV or the newspaper. They're like, "Oh, this person was such a great actor, and they did all these movies, and really impressive." And he died at 73. And I'm thinking, this 74, 75. I'm thinking, well, that's only 8 years away, and all that means to me is the way I practice and live my life right now is very important to me. I want to do the right thing as best I can each day. Um, I'll say one other thing that Tammy has told me many times, and you've been a great support to me. I'm someone who look back and say, I wish I'd done this and I wish I'd done that. And what about this? And Tammy has always reminded me that the past is in the past and there's nothing that I can do about it. This is why we say one day at a time. A lot of you spouses, what am I going to do? It'll never. You have today. How's it going today? And who knows how it's going tomorrow? So I hope that you find a way to get support and to really do that, to say, this is where I am now and how can I and therapeutic separation. I'll just drop it there. Um, do
And I
you?
guess who had already put the therapeutic separation we did a webinar as well as the pod.
That's
So I put
because
the
after
link to
all
the
these years,
podcast.
we in here
Yeah, yeah.
we're like one person.
There you go. So, and that is just one option. I also put, should I stay or should I go? And it's not about you deciding, should I stay or should I go? Like, there's, and I put, Kristen Snowden did the first one using Dr. John Gottman's, information. It's 10 questions to journal about it. And sometimes you can go, well, I'm still 80% in. Okay, well, that's information for your brain. I hate that you had a horrible formal therapeutic disclosure, when it's a train wreck.
Right.
Like, to me, I mean, I hate that. Like, this is, there's such a 92% of people who do a formal therapeutic disclosure are glad they did it. Don't think it was a fun time, but are glad they did it. But when it goes sideways like this is horrible. I really hate that you have all these images, and I don't know if too much gory detail was shared or if you saw stuff. I don't know. And you're right, it is harder. If brain spotting and EMDR haven't worked for you, there's a whole bunch of other modalities. Don't give up. I don't know who you're working with, for a qualified professional for you. If you don't have one, TAMI at seekingintegrity.com, and tell me where you're located so I can help you find someone who can help. But like I said, there's a lot of other modalities, and there are some partners that, need a higher level of care. And that there are some options, for that could be useful for you too. So don't give up. And because you know what, I was just emailing with somebody, and it's a partner who is 70. I will be very careful about what I say. But she is 3 years out, and she took up running, and she's sending me updates, including pictures of her running races. She's doing awesome. So you can be empowered. You can, you can find your path. So this does not have to define you. I again hate that, transactional sex, like, I know that was that, like, I know all of this is painful for you, and there's no connection with that, that somebody's, providing good customer service because they want money and a tip and everything else, and it's like, I understand your disgust and all of that. And, like, from what I hear, I mean, you went through a formal therapeutic disclosure. So, the two of you are still in it to some degree. What you choose to do is absolutely your choice, moving forward. There is help for you. So if you don't, like, if I hear the dysregulation, it doesn't feel like you've had the right level of help for you. I'm with Dr. Rob. If, like, time's a wasting, if he isn't really, leaning into recovery, our residential treatment program could be, really helpful for you and for both of you, helpful for him, but also the separation for you, where you can get, stabilized and grounded and, get some clarity. Like, that's really what do you need right now? Not in 2 years. What do you need right now so that you are able to be present in your body? Your thinking part of your brain can show up for you. Like, I mean, like this is hard. So anything we can do to be helpful. Again, TAMI@seekingintegrity.com if I can be of
I
help.
do want to say one more thing about that question, which is to me, and this is just my experience, to me, EMDR and brain studying are a little bit further down the line. Um, I think when someone's been working on this for a while and they're having repetitive, and I don't mean 6 months here, but a lot of, it's interesting, we have themes. A lot of themes tonight are how can I get rid of these feelings? How can I move through them faster? And and most of I hear is because this is so incredibly painful and I keep being reminded of it. And it's almost to me like there isn't a normalization of, yeah, this is what you're going to go through. And it's unfortunate. But those particular modalities, they're not a cure. They are in addition to primary therapy. So I would never say, oh, go to EMDR to a friend. I would say, go to therapy, have a really good therapist, someone you're working with, and they might direct you to do this in a bit specific way to a specific thing. But it seems to me a little early, and there probably is other work that you probably need to do because those are things that are very much directed at taking some of the sting out of the trauma or the repetition. And I think you have to kind of get to the place of more of I don't mean to say peace, but integrating what's happened and the immediacy of what you're feeling without saying that's repetitive, happens all the time, because of course it's going to happen all the time in the beginning. Um, yeah, I feel bad, Tammy. I wish I could take the pain away, and I really do. But what did
And
they
we
say? The only
can't.
way out is through.
Everyone's
You can't
exactly.
go
Everyone's
around. You
on
can't
their
go
own journey. Yes.
right.
And we can be here and support. But we've been on our journeys and everybody's on theirs and we are here. We want to help, and we know people can heal. So yeah, reach out if we can help. Thank you, Dr.
I've
Rob.
smashed
Grateful
the
for
chicken. It's
go
marinated.
smash.
I have to go put it in the
Yeah.
oven. I feel bad for the chicken. I don't do
No,
that.
they're there for a reason.
Well, they're
So
gone. So they're gone.
yeah,
Just anyway, good to
go
see
enjoy your
you.
dinner. All right, talk to
Thank
you later.
you. We
Bye.
hope.